Hey my friend, in this video I'm going to demystify diminished chords for you. I'm going to show you many useful chord shapes, how to build them, and how to use them musically in your own chord progressions. So I find that most videos on diminished chords for guitar players on YouTube are going too fast. They're like, you have this shape and this shape and this shape, and you know what a diminished chord is, so let's dive right into the tips. And I'm like, whoa, slower please. So if you felt like this is gonna be the best video for you because I'm gonna take my time to explain. So first of all, let's start at the beginning. How do we build a diminished chord? So let's start by picking any note we want. Let's say this one. That's an E on the 7th fret of the 5th string. And the way diminished chords are built is that we're going to start from a note and stack other notes that are always 3 semitones higher than the previous one. So 3 semitones, on and on. So I have a pretty quick trick for that. You start here, like I said, and then you're going to lay your fingers flat on the fretboard on the same string. So all my fingers are 1 fret apart on the 5th string. So on my index, it's going to be my starting note, and on my pinky, this is the note that I'm going to stack because it's 3 semitones higher. 1, 2, 3, 3 frets higher. So the note on my pinky right now is a G, so I know that I'm going to stack E and a G, right? And then you do that from all new starting points. From the G, I'm doing the same thing. 1, 2, 3. The note on my pinky is a B flat, so I'm going to stack E, G, and B flat. And that does my diminished chord on a 3-note structure. But we don't have to stop there. We can keep going. So from the B flat, once again, 1, 2, 3. The new note on my pinky is a D flat. So now I have E, G, B flat, and D flat. So that is my full 4-note structure diminished chord. And if I want to go further, it doesn't work, and let's see why. If I want to keep going and keep stacking, so from my D flat, if I do that, 1, 2, 3, the note that I have right now on my pinky is an E, but I already have an E. It's my starting note. So it means that a diminished chord can never have more than 4 different notes, because if you keep going, you just create duplicates of the same notes. So you have a 3-note structure, diminished chord, and a 4-note structure. But now it's not really practical, right? It's not even playable. So let's see some more practical chord shapes. And it's really counterintuitive, but the 4-note structure, diminished chord, is actually easier to play and more practical than the 3rd note structure, and I'm going to explain why in a minute. So here are some popular chord shapes. This one from the 6th string. So you start with your middle finger on the 8th fret of the 6th string. Then you bar the 7th fret with your index from strings 4 to 2, and you add your ring on the 8th fret of the 3rd string. And you kind of have to mute the rest. And obviously you can play that wherever you want. It doesn't have to be from the 8th fret, but I just decided to start from here. So that is the shape from the 6th string. Then one of my favorite shapes from the 5th string is this one, right? So starting from the 5th string, we have the middle on the 8th fret, we have the ring on the 9th fret, the index on the 7th fret, and the pinky on the 9th. That's one of the most comfortable positions for me. And starting from the 4th fret, we have 4th string, sorry, we have this shape right here. Also very practical. So starting from the 4th, index is on the 8th fret, a ring on the 9th, middle on the 8th, and pinky on the 9th. So those are the 3 most used shapes. And now let's explain why a 3-note structure diminished chord is not easier to play. I recommend playing it in a smaller voicing if you want to play only 3 notes. Like this, because if you want to make the chord thicker, let's say, you have to add more notes, but you have to add duplicates of the same notes, octaves of the same notes, and most of the times it creates shapes that are stretchier. and not so practical to play. And in this case, the role of a diminished chord is to add more tension. So why would you play a 3-note structure like this when you can get more tension from a shape like this, right? If you compare the sound of both, this one has more tension, right? So I'd rather use these shapes than 3-note structured shapes. So now let's see how we can use the diminished chords musically in our chord progressions. I have 3 ways that I love to do it. The first way is to use it in between chords that are placed a tone apart. So let's say that I have a chord progression in the key of D major. So I would have D major, E minor, A, and B minor. Right? So in the key of D major, that's the root chord, the 2 chord, the 5 chord, and the 6 chord. So since D and E minor are a tone apart, they are 2 frets apart, I can slap a diminished chord in between them. And the same goes for A and B minor. They are 1 tone apart, 2 frets apart, so I can slap a diminished chord in between them. It adds a nice spice, a nice tension in between them. So I start from D, then I choose the note, the bass note that's in between the root note of both of my chords, and from there I build my shape of my diminished chord. So the shape from the 5th string, remember, is like this, and then I can land on my E minor, so it goes like this. Sounds sweet, and the same goes for the A and the B. I'm gonna pick up the note in between them, and I'm gonna create my shape of my diminished chord, this time from the 6th string, so that is this shape. And then I can play. Nice. So if I play the whole progression with the diminished chords added, it sounds like this. Sweet, so I like to use it this way. The second way that I like to use diminished chords is to travel up and down the fretboard smoother. Because if you look at this diminished chord right now, I said that we build it by stacking intervals that are always a 3 semitone higher each time. So it means that if I go 3 frets higher with the same chord, it stays the same chord. Right? This is the kind of sound that we hear in the like silent movies and black and white, where like there's a lady tied on the track train and you hear like to build tension, and then the major chord after, right? So it's used to build tension, but now it's the same chord when we jump 3 frets higher or 3 frets down on the fretboard. If I analyze the notes of this chord, we've got an E flat, we've got an A C, and a G flat. If I go 3 frets higher, I get G flat, C, E flat, and A. Exactly the same notes, but in a different order. So in fact, this is the same chord, right? So it means that if I have a chord progression where I have to jump a lot, let's say I have D followed by G. But let's say that I want to play my G chord, instead of playing here, I want to play it from the 10th fret here. That's quite a big jump, right? Right? So what I can do is to bridge the gap with a diminished chord. I could start from D, play my diminished chord just 1 fret higher, and then travel 3 frets higher until I am closest to the chord where I want to land. And then I can resolve on this, and it sounds super cool. So something like... And now you bridge the gap between your chords that were distant in here. So that's something that I love to do with diminished chords too. And a third way that I love to use it is to modulate with the use of the diminished chord, to change keys. Because if you're thinking about it, if the diminished chord is the same 3 frets higher each time, it means that we only truly have 3 diminished chords existing. This one, and this one. Because as soon as we go 3 frets higher, it's repeating the same. It's just an inversion of the same. So since we have so few diminished chords, it means that we have so many different landing spots or resolutions, and we can use that to change keys or to modulate, right? So let's say I pick this shape right here. The rule of thumb is that you can pick any note in that chord, go 1 fret higher. So let's say I pick the note on the 4th string, go 1 fret higher, and then from that place you can build a chord. So that note is an A, so I can build an A major chord, and that becomes a good resolution for my diminished chord. And you can do that for all notes in the chord. So if I focus on the note on the 3rd string, 1 fret higher is E flat, so I could resolve on an E flat chord. And it's still as satisfying as the first option. If I focus on the 2nd string, if I go 1 fret higher, that's an F sharp, so I could resolve on an F sharp major. And if I focus on the 1st string, 1 fret higher is C, so I could resolve on C major. So you see, all of these resolutions are satisfying and acceptable. So we have 4 different places where we could go with the same diminished chord. And that's not even true, because we could have 8 places to go, because we can land on minor chords too. So from this place, I could play A minor instead. I could land on E flat minor. I could land on F sharp minor. Or I could land on C minor. Like this one. So you have 8 different places where you can go as landing spots after playing a diminished chord, and you can use that to your advantage to change keys if you want. And you don't even have to change keys. You just gotta make sure that the diminished chords that you're using is going to resolve well on the chord where you want to land. So for example, if I come back to my example of using D and E minor after that, and that I put a diminished chord in between, let's say that I want to resolve back to D. I could just transform my E minor chord into an E diminished and then ask myself, is it going to resolve well on D? Yes, because the note on my 3rd string, here, C sharp, 1 fret higher, is a D. It means that it's going to resolve well on a D. So in my case, I could have a chord progression of D, E flat diminished, E minor, and E diminished, and that would sound super good with 2 diminished chords in the same 4 chord progression. It resolves really well on the D chord here, so many possibilities with that principle here. So to use it in between chords that are a tone apart, to bridge the gap between distant chords on your fretboard, and to modulate to a lot of different keys and different options. And if it's still going too fast for you and you still don't understand the relationship between chords and how do you build triads and stuff like this, I really encourage you to take my free course, first link in the description box. In that course, I show you how to build triads and how to harmonize keys and find any chords that you want in any key. And you can download chord charts and exercises for free. There is about 45 minutes of lessons and it's totally for free. So it's my pleasure. You can get it, first link in the description box. And if you want to stick around, I have a bonus section at the end of this video to explain where do the diminished chords come from. Hey, thanks for sticking around. So a question that I get a lot is, where does the diminished chord come from? I understand that the 3-note structure of the diminished chord comes from the regular harmonization of a major scale, right? You probably know that each key has 7 chords and that they are all pretty much major or minor chords. So if I am in the key of C, they are all major or minor chords, but the 7th chord is a diminished chord, right? So we understand that, right? That we can stack triads and that the 7th one is a diminished one. But what we don't understand is that if we keep stacking to get a 4-note structure, we don't get a diminished chord. We get... And this note is not a diminished note. It's supposed to be... So what we have here is a minor 7 flat 5, or what people call a half diminished structure. So if we harmonize the same key but with 4-note structures, we get C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, and we get B half diminished, so minor 7 flat 5. So where does the fully diminished chord comes from? Where does it come from if it's not included in a regular harmonization like this? There are 2 possible options here. It could come from harmonizing a harmonic minor scale. A harmonic minor scale goes like this. So you have 1, 2, flat 3, 4, 5, flat 6, natural 7, 1. So if we stack our thirds with the harmonic minor, we do get the fully diminished chord with all the right notes. So we could say that when we use a diminished chord is that we are borrowing the 7th chord of the harmonization of a harmonic minor scale or key or mode if you prefer, right? So that could come from harmonic minor, but also it could come from a dominant 7 chord. So if you look at this shape right here, that's a diminished chord, right? If I remove my pinky and we just look at the shape of this, it reminds me of a dominant 7 chord. Right, it's very similar. That's the flat 7, the 3rd, and the 5th of a G dominant 7. And when we add the pinky on top, we are adding a flat 9 to add more tension. So we are so used to hear dominant 7 chords and 5 chords. It's been around for hundreds of years in the music that we're listening to, that when we hear that, a diminished chord like this, our ears want to latch onto it like it's a dominant chord, like it's an altered chord in a sense, right? So that's why it's so satisfying to hear this resolution to a root, because we perceive it more as a dominant chord without a root, right? It's just a flat 7, 3, 5, and flat 9 of this chord, and we perceive it more like this than as a standalone diminished chord. So that's the two possible explanations. It comes from harmonic minor, or it's an altered chord without the root. So thanks for sticking around. And once again, if you want to go further, I have my free mini course that you can enroll in to go further with me. And if you're looking to listen to a next video on YouTube, I can suggest this one. This is a really nice trick where you can find any chord in any key you want, and you don't even have to know your harmonization for that. This blew me away, and a lot of people in the comment section of this video too. So you can click on that for your next video, and thanks for watching. Until next time, au revoir.